Now, this practical business was the foundation for his social interactions and interpersonal relations. He believed that women and men, and children too, possess a dual or parallel life, that they are spiritual beings endowed with an active living soul, a soul that, once birthed, has to be nourished, just as the physical body needs food, drink, shelter, and knowledge. The soul could mature into adulthood, as it were, even in the smallest child, and therefore it deserved the respect and care of everyone, individually and in community. This concept, in fact, is the central understanding of the religious doctrine practiced in this church, the International Community of Christ, which he created. Thus, in Jean's eyes, every child, woman, and man is the Christ child. Lest you think that I am deluded by my love and admiration of him and certainly the pain of his loss, let me say that Jean was not an easy man to understand or please. God knows that, as many of you do, too. He was not a goody two-shoes, far from it. And he had to deal with his demons just as surely as you and I. He, however, battled with his human limitations 24/7, so to speak, by engaging in constant meditation, introspection, reflection, and a superconscious effort to transcend the burdens of this world through love and charity of heart. And nowhere were these efforts better expressed than in his everyday interactions with others. I don't think there is a person here today who doesn't know that. Jean touched everyone he came in contact with, even total strangers he had never seen before and would never see again. Let me explain. If he was walking down the street and someone passing by happened to look his way, he would burst into a cheery, "How are you, dear?" if it was a lady, or a chummy, "Good to see you, my friend," if it was a man. He actually had no idea who the person was, but that didn't matter to him. It seemed to me, though, that he actually knew that person's inner being. Indeed, if his church and his explorations were important to him, his relations were just as important. I never saw him as excited as when Bill, his brother, moved down to Mexico with his family to work with him on expeditionary projects. He wouldn't stop talking about all the forays into the wilderness and their spelunking outings way back then when they were young men in Oregon. And when we moved from Mexico to Reno, a week didn't go by when he didn't call his parents and his Uncle Leonard. He visited Len, Dolores, and their children Jody and Lindsay on more than one occasion, to Jean's great delight. I also remember well the twinkle in his eyes when he spoke about the strapping and handsome twins, his brothers Jerry and Derry, who in their adolescence, it seems, they had been some sort of devil-may-care James Dean types, and whom I would soon meet on my first trip to Medford. He brimmed with pride for his younger brother Doug, who was in the CIA and in the FBI, depending on the time of year, when Doug visited us in Reno. Often he would speak with much love about his aunts Amy, Lorraine, and Oni, recounting memories of his youth with them, and about his cousins, nephews, and nieces, many of whom he met anew on his return back to this country. Jean was saddened when his parents moved to Reno didn't last long. They were too much creatures of the Pacific Northwest. And he suffered in silence the distances of time and of the heart. His affections also ran deep towards others besides his family. Jean was always kind and caring with my mother, whom he called Mamita, and with my siblings. Even throughout all of our years apart, he continued to visit with them every time he was in Lima. Some of his last words to me, a few days before his passing, were, in fact, "How is everyone in Peru?" Speaking of Peru, some of his dearest relationships were made there. With C.N. Griffiths, the founder and editor of the Peruvian Times, Nick Asheshov, that weekly's managing editor, and Griffiths' granddaughter, Ellie. And there is Jimmy Casapia, owner of a tour agency and a collaborator of his expeditions, and his late wife, Panchita. But if Jean loved anyone in Peru, he was surely fond of Pancho Seoane, his assistant and expeditionary buddy of many years. Jean's warmth knew no distinctions. He showered it on all freely, treating everyone with the same regard. Were Segundo Grandes, whom I knew, his longtime jungle assistants, or Vicente Durango, the Guardia Civil policeman assigned to him, or one of the many muleteers or machete men here to bear witness to what I am saying, they would tell you so. A slap on the shoulder, a private moment smoking a cigarette, or a collective shot of moonshine under the pouring rain said it all. Jean's kindness was understated. He wrapped it up in some sort of deal or arrangement that ensured the recipient would maintain his or her dignity. Under the right circumstance, he would also willingly give it all. I remember in Lima once when a tall, lanky man, bedraggled and scruffy, approached him in the street near our office. In but a second, Jean emptied his wallet and gave the man his coat. Noticing that I was taken aback, he simply said, he was a businessman who has suffered a terrible reverse in life, and said nothing more. Just as he did in Peru and Mexico when he lived in those countries, here in Reno, he endeared himself to restaurant and bar servers, business owners and clerks. While he may have been, or seemed, like a regular guy, a little odd perhaps, he knew exactly what he was doing when he offered to smile, a hand, or regale them with a joke or a tale. For every gesture and word carried the light of his soul as a blessing to each. I feel truly sorry for those who, over his many years, have scorned or shunned him. They missed out on the pleasure of having a loyal and caring friend. Members of this church know this well. Dinners and lunches were a family affair at the rectory in which one or more guests participated. Sometimes they were up to 20. Jean took special care to invite those church members who were single and had no family in Reno, and he was always ready for them with a joke or a glass of wine. Now, it is no secret that Jean had a keen eye for the ladies. And let's admit it, the ladies were never too shy about vying for his favors. Who can blame them? He had that look, you know. It was an irresistible mix of Errol Flynn, Clark Gable, and Indiana Jones. With that suave, debonair, swashbuckling air. But I digress.